Service Lab is a community of service design doers and service design curious. We meet up every few months to share our learnings with each other. Welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. For anyone new to Service Lab, we're going to do some quick introductions. So Service Lab is a space for practitioners to share experiences, inspire each other and learn new things. We've had a big variety of events in the past, all around policy design, behavioural design, healthcare, designing inclusively, and much, much more. It's a very informal event. Have your camera on, off, whatever you prefer. We welcome everyone. Please do feel free to attend wherever you're at, whether you're out for a walk. If you're out on the walk, I'm sure you're getting really wet at the moment. Whether you're eating, cleaning, still doing work, got a little one with you, or a curious cat that wants attention. In whatever space you want to join, feel free. We always try to make this an accessible and inclusive event. So if there is anything else that we can do to make this the best experience for everyone, please do let us know. A quick introduction to the Service Lab organisers. So we have a couple of different organisers. I'll do a quick intro to myself. So I'm Charlie Pothicary. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a freelance service designer with a focus on designing inclusive services. I started a small agency, mainly just me, and a couple of nice freelancers occasionally. It's called Inclusively. I generally work across the public sector, social enterprises, charities, and a lot in the healthcare sector. I'm currently sat in a white room. I've got a couple of plants behind me. I am wearing a very bright orange jumper with some yellow earrings, and I am white with long brown hair. Otla, who is the next person on screen, is not able to make it along today. And Rupert is also one of our kind of background organisers. Rupert actually helped to co-found, along with Jenny, one of our brilliant speakers tonight, Service Lab. But I'll pass over to Katrina, who'll do a quick introduction as well.
Hi, so my name is Katrina. My pronouns is she, her. I'm currently working as a service designer at the CIPD. It's a professional body for HR and L&D people. I'm working on making services more customer friendly, efficient, and accessible. I'm a white blondish woman and wearing a green sweater and glasses. As a background, I have a gray wall and mustard curtain.
Just to let everyone know that we will be doing a few tweets from the event. If anyone else is up for kind of tweeting about anything that they think other people wider from this event could learn from, please do. A little note that we are recording this session. We do that so that more people that can't join at this time can still benefit from all of the great things that the speakers are going to say, just to make sure it's as inclusive and accessible as it can be. But if you don't want to be recorded, please do turn your cameras off and change your name to being anonymous. Before we get started today, we actually have a couple of community asks. We would really like to do some in-person events again. It's got much harder for us to be able to find event spaces. Not as many people have large studios. Event spaces have gone up a lot in price and things like that. So if anyone knows of any great event spaces, if anyone wants to lend us any, if anyone wants us to come and host a Service Lab at their studio, we would utterly love it. The main things that we're looking for is somewhere that's accessible, somewhere kind of central, and that can hold at least kind of 60 people or so. As otherwise a lot of people can't kind of attend. The next community ask is, and we always keep this open, so you can always approach us any time of the year. If you want to give a talk, let us know. If you want to nominate someone else to give a talk, please always reach out. And if you've got like a theme or topic suggestion that you just really think you'd like to personally learn about and you think others would as well, please always reach out to us. And then our third ask is, would anyone want to come join us? As being a Service Lab co-organizer. I've been doing it for a couple of years, absolutely love it. Katrina's joined us for about 1.5 years now, and Otla's been with us for a couple of years as well. But we'd really like to have some more support on the team. We took a little bit of a hiatus over the last couple of months as we all had quite a lot going on. So yeah, if anyone's up for getting involved, it's a really fun job. You get to basically work out who would you really want to learn things from, and then you get to go and approach them, and a lot of the time they say yes and they come and do great talks and you get to learn lots of things. Our only other thing before we get into the main event is we're also wondering whether we could do a in-person networking event in December. So if anyone is up for this, if you can just jump into the chat and just let us know if we bothered to put on something at a pub or a cafe at some point in December, just so that people can network and meet people again. Yeah, let us know. If there isn't much of an appetite for it, no worries. All right, over to the main thing. So we have a fantastic event for you all. We have some really brilliant speakers. And the reason why we wanted to focus on co-design is we all felt like co-design is such an essential part of designing services and tools and products. And it can be approached in so many different ways and utilized with so many different people, whether that's stakeholders, end users, throughout a project. And today we're going to hear some co-design approaches and how people use it across their different design practice and across their lives as well. So I'm going to pass over to Katrina, who's going to introduce us to our first speaker.
So our first speaker is Trisha. She's currently a leading user researcher at ZaID, and her previous employers or clients in the UK include FutureGov, JP Morgan, and Google. Trisha's current career focus is supporting more junior UX designers and researchers, not only to deliver better experiences for users, but also how to better design their work life for improved well-being. As you can see, we couldn't find a better speaker to talk about how to apply co-design skills to our working lives, not just products and services. Trisha, over to you. Please introduce yourself, your pronouns, and a visual description of yourself.
Say much more about myself, but my pronouns are she, her. I have long dark hair, brown skin. I'm wearing a gold cardigan with a black top. And I've been in UX for about a decade now, wide range of experiences in different countries, sectors, and organizations. And I'll try to cover my talk in 10 minutes. So here we go, co-designing with colleagues. You can find me on Twitter. So for this talk, I reflected on my own experiences and what I've learned so far at different places I've worked. A couple are listed here, which Katrina already mentioned, so I won't call them out again. But essentially, and I believe that as designers and researchers, we have a superpower that enables us to create better work environments for ourselves. And we're quite skilled and used to applying design thinking skills to create better products and services for users. But what if we can use these skills to make our own work life better for ourselves? And I can see this from 3 different perspectives. I have been and currently am a line manager, I'm a line managee, and I have also recently worked and often work as a user researcher within agile delivery teams. But essentially, in all these areas, I thought about how can I transfer my design thinking from projects to my own life? And how can I move from trying to figure things out on my own to bring my colleagues into my problem space to help me figure it out? So I'll cover each of these perspectives and give an example of how I've done that in my experience so far. So the first perspective is as a line manager, how I've done this. So I've managed several researchers and designers in my career. And usually my role and responsibility is quite clear as a manager. But individual I manage can have different preferences and needs in what works for them and how they are managed. Especially when I was an early line manager, I wanted to be sure that I was learning and improving on myself. And I wanted to build relationships with the people I managed so that we can have psychological safety and trust. One thing I've done is I've actually used Retro, which is an agile tool. So on this slide here, it's an actual retro I've done with someone I've managed in the past. And I've relabeled the sections to focus on continue, meaning what worked well in our line management relationship in the last 3 months. To stop is what hasn't worked well. The invent is how can we do things differently in the next 3 months in how we work together, and then actions, what we take away. And we all use retros in agile delivery. And sometimes retros don't feel like a safe space in teams. So one of the things I had to think about is how can I make this something that's useful with the people I line manage to help us design how we work together and how we interact. So I decided to use it as an experiment with the people I manage, and we can iterate on it every 3 months. I'll go at the end into how I set up all these approaches, but essentially I framed it as an experiment, and I want to focus on how I can improve and how I help them, and also for them to also highlight what they need from me, what hasn't been working. I was thinking about what's the outcome of this? How can I show this worked? This might seem a bit self-indulgent, so forgive me, but I had a pretty good relationship with 2 of our people I manage, and I got this card when I left one of my previous organizations. So it really helped us to kind of highlight and create a safe space for me to actually understand individual needs and kind of tailor like how often we're meeting, what we talk about, how we structure our sessions so that they can feel safe. And I also can give them feedback in a safe way as well. The next kind of perspective is as someone who's being line managed. So in one place I worked, I see it as I co-designed my career progression experience with my line manager and head of practice. So the scenario here is that I wanted to progress to the next level in my career. And that organization at the time didn't have a clear or updated progression framework for my role. So I wasn't sure what was needed of me. And I also was a bit nervous about having this conversation with my seniors. Like, it can be a tricky conversation, but I needed clarity to know what I had to do to be considered for promotion. My line manager and the head of practice were 2 different people at the time, and they were key colleagues I needed to get this help from to know what I need to do. But they were super busy, super stretched for time, so I was finding it hard to kind of pin down expectations. So what I did, or I wanted you to do, is to get an understanding really of what's expected of me to move from where I am now to where I want to go, and also understand how progression works in this organization, so I can kind of pace myself, or I can just kind of know what to expect and like what kind of processes I need to go through to get there, and also what challenges or what kind of criteria I need to consider. One thing I did, and I showed on the slide, I've removed like any confidential stuff and identities, but basically I decided to be proactive and involve my line manager and the head of practice into my thought process to help me figure out what do I need to do with the lack of a progression framework and with the limited time. So I designed and I designed a 30-minute session where I had my manager and head of practice just come together, and together we focused on, as our individual roles, what are our needs, what are our goals, what are the challenges that we have when it comes to making a decision or determining if someone is ready for promotion. So in this way, as a researcher, we always think about user needs and what are the challenges and pain points and motivations. So I thought about, well, what if I take this approach with my seniors and take a step back, and rather than kind of asking like, what do I need to do to progress, I understand their perspective. I understand what they need to see from me to be more visible and close to my work, and what are some challenges in the wider organization that they may be facing to get that visibility or to make a decision or to get clarity. And I found this worked really well because we ended up capturing the same kind of information here, but it created a safe space, an equal space for all 3 of us to express and to share our perspectives and where we're coming at for this conversation. And also we focused more broadly on progression for a researcher in the organization. So it wasn't just focusing on me personally. And by doing this, I carved out just 30 minutes of time, but that was enough from their busy schedules to get my colleagues to start thinking about like expectations and needs for progression for me. In terms of like how this kind of worked out, I actually got this feedback from one of the seniors about after the session. So it proved to me that actually this was a good approach to do, and we kept doing it with other colleagues. Basically, she said that she doesn't have time to think about these things, but it's super important. So by taking this kind of approach of thinking about how do I design this conversation, I've created a space for her to stop and think and to share with me how we can move forward with this promotion conversation. And the final perspective is As a hands-on user researcher in an agile delivery team, I've experienced that often there are sometimes tricky stakeholders, and in one particular job, I had a tricky product manager who didn't really understand how research worked. So I was working on a big project with myself and 2 other user researchers. There was conflict between product and business needs and priorities, and what we were hearing from users in line with what the business was focusing on, the product was prioritizing. And there was a low level of understanding of how to work and use user research, and several risks were arising to the product that were being captured from a previous researcher, but there was no one was taking these risks seriously. So a user research risk log is what we had, and that existed. What I needed to do here in this scenario was to think about how we can highlight the risks that are coming up based on user research findings to the product manager, so that it can be taken seriously and they can really see that we need to reprioritize what we're focusing on and deliver a high quality product at the end. So I did 2 things here. The first thing, it was 3 researchers, me and 2 others. So one thing I realized or observed is that it's easy to get into this space where we get frustrated working with challenging colleagues who don't seem to understand research. And that's a space that I think was developing. So what I facilitated was an empathy mapping session with myself and the other researchers to take a step back and think about, as a product manager, what does the world in this product look like, feel like, what are we thinking, hearing, and all these things that we normally do for our users. And by doing that, among the 3 of us, we were able to kind of focus on actually what the product owner might need to see and what might resonate with them. And then what we did is that by putting ourselves in the shoes of the product manager, we were able to go to the list of risks that we had and reframe all the risks previously identified from the product perspective. So on this slide, I give one example of those risks. The main change shown here is that there was a shift from focusing on not enough research as a risk to the risk being rework and wasted effort as a risk. And I think that way of framing risk could not have happened if we went into it as kind of being in a frustrated space, but by kind of building empathy for the product manager, we were able to see that actually one of their pain points was having to redo work and waste time, the team's time. Then based on that, we set up a session with a product manager and went through the redone risk log that was focusing on their perspectives and their needs. And actually it worked better where the risks were taken more seriously, and then some changes were made in the priorities of the product roadmap. So time to wrap up. Overall, I thought about, it's not just about the tools and templates and these particular things I've done. It's co-designing with colleagues. It's important to remember that we think about designing a safe space where people feel comfortable and ready to share, just like we do with users. So here are some tips I thought about to set up this environment across all the different perspectives that would help create that space. Just like we would users, we need to be clear with what they're coming into. I found it like giving people a heads up before the meeting. For example, I'm going to try something new. It may or may not work, but I really want to understand your perspective. So help me work on this as an example. Lead with curiosity, focus on the value you can bring to them. All these things I think I touched on before. I'll share the slides after so you can get these as well. And in conclusion, a quote stands out to me that I think brings us all together from one of my favorite books. And it says, seek first to understand, then to be understood, which I think is the essence of thinking about co-designing with others. Go into the sessions, the design sessions, thinking about, I want to understand your needs, your challenges, and how can I help you? So for Q&A, I'd love to stay in touch as well. Even after the meeting, you can message me to keep chatting about this.
Amazing. Thank you so much. A big virtual round of applause for Trisha. That was fantastic. So we'll open up to questions. Feel free to unmute yourself and shout out, or pop something into the chat. All right, I'll get us started off then. What do you think, in your experience, has been the best thing about investing the time and effort into co-designing with colleagues?
It helps a lot with my own well-being as well. It took me in a headspace of being passive to what happens in the world of work to being a more active participant in kind of designing and shaping what my work life looks like. So for the career progression example, I felt a lot more like in the driving seat of it and having an idea of how that conversation went rather than being nervous and avoiding it.
Amazing. We've got another question from Christine Fent. Did you run the retro session with the entire team or individually?
Individually. So that was the context of that was for line management. So it had to be individual, I believe, just to create more psychological safety to be able to talk about things more openly. Another question there. What did you do if you got pushback from people, struggle with, resistant to the approach, convince them to engage? I see it more as an experiment because I think, as I mentioned, like my motivation for trying these things is that I think we have the skills and expertise, but we forget about using it. So I won't be surprised if when trying this with my colleagues in different scenarios, they're a bit like, oh, this is different. Like, why are we doing this? So I frame it as best as I can as just, humor me for a bit. I'm trying to help you by understanding your needs. And usually when you frame it as the value you can bring to people, then it becomes less about the approach and more about what they need. So I think that has worked really well. If I have to convince them for an approach, then it's not, I drop the approach, I drop the tool, because it's not about the tool or the method at the end of the day. It's about understanding the people I work with and what they need and how I can help them and what challenges they have to get what I need at the end as well. So I think that, focus on the user, which is a colleague.
Amazing. We've got a hand up from Alex as well.
Hey there. I'm curious, first of all, actually, as a manager, I love that you've taken, I guess, the initiative to shape your own kind of progression when there was nothing. I'm kind of curious if you actually asked the people who manage you or head up the practice how they felt when you invited them to this kind of conversation, and when, I guess, whether it felt like threatening to them that they haven't done enough, or whether there's anything interesting that came out.
Thanks for that feedback. It was risky, I think. I felt a bit like, ooh, this feels like I might doing something too crazy here. But I think the preamble, just like we would frame a research session, I said I want to try something different, because I only tried that after several attempts of trying to get time and wasn't able to get time, and asking questions about what I need to progress and not getting clarity. So I tried that rather than getting frustrated. I'd be like, okay, let's try something different here, because I haven't gotten the answers I need to know what to do. I didn't say it in that way, but that's essentially what I was feeling. And it was just 30 minutes, so it wasn't like a whole day or half day workshop. And I shared the board in advance to give them a heads up of what it might look like, and they can fill it out before if they want, or come in, so it wasn't like put on the spot. And with all of that steps in place before, when we came into the actual meeting, it wasn't any surprises. They had a chance before the meeting to say, actually, I don't want to do this. I have another idea. I opened it up. So I keep the approach open to feedback as well, because at the end of the day, I need to understand what their needs and challenges are, and I'm open to changing the approach. That was just one way to structure it.
Thank you. Yeah, that sounds really exciting, actually. As a busy manager, I think I would probably appreciate it if somebody approached me in that way. That sounds good.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, Trisha. I think we'll leave it there with questions. If anyone does have any follow-up questions, though, I'm sure if you put them in the chat, Trisha, we're about to come back to you. But that was phenomenal. Thank you. A lot to think about in different ways in which we can use some of those kind of classic co-design principles as well in different parts of our lives. So I'll pass over to Katrina, who's going to introduce you to our next speaker.
So our first speaker was brilliant, and the second will be the same. So we have Luke. Luke is the design director and the co-founder of Metal. He often takes on a hybrid role of lead designer and product owner. Luke helps stakeholders to crystallize a proposition, collaborating and refining with internal teams, and bring design to life through beautiful UX and UI. Luke is passionate about agile working processes and using the latest collaborative and digital design tools to take internal teams on the design journey. He's going to share his passion and expertise with us today. Luke, please introduce yourself and don't forget about your pronouns and the visual description.
Hi, thank you very much. Thank you for that lovely introduction. Let me just bring my screen up. Yeah, I'm Luke. I'm the design director at Metal, a design and engineering consultancy. My preferred pronouns are he, him. I'm in a sort of greyish coloured room with a couple of bikes behind me. I'm wearing a dark coloured jumper and I've got some glasses on. And I'm going to talk to you today about taking clients on an agile journey. Now, a few caveats before I get started. I'm not an expert in agile, and I'm definitely not an expert in agile at scale, about things like less and safe. But what I do have is lots of experience across a wide range of different industries. At Metal, we've worked on lots of different types of products, from medical devices to kind of engineering software, luxury e-com, lots of different things. And I feel like this way of working is applicable in lots of different spaces. Why am I here today? Well, at Metal, we say great ideas deserve to be made, and I'm very passionate about designing with impact, and that to me is twofold. One is kind of designing great things, making sure that we design the right things that solve real user needs, but then it's also making sure that designs actually get made, and you can't have impact if things don't see the light of day. So yeah, very passionate about making sure that things actually are delivered. Before I talk to you about how we work now, I'd kind of like to take you on a bit of a journey, or like our journey of how we used to work and how we used to talk about our way of working. And we've kind of learned agile the hard way. So our process previously, or the way that we used to talk about our process was a kind of adaptation of a double diamond and sprint-based approach. So we might go through these kind of phases. We'd have a definition phase where we would define the problem that we were trying to solve, a create phase where we might explore different solutions and iterate on that, a design implementation phase where we would kind of take the preferred solution, draw up some designs and hand those over to development, and then have a kind of dev implementation phase where we would kind of take those designs and sort of run with them and make a first version of a product. And if you lay them out on a roadmap, it might look something like this. So you've kind of got two streams of work running in parallel: design, which is define, create, and implement, and then development, which might be kind of technical definition at the beginning, technical de-risking, back-end build. So that might be all the kind of development that can happen without having the front-end design drawn up. And then once the front-end design is kind of ready, you do the front-end. And hopefully all those things would kind of fall into place, and you'd end up with a product maybe 6 to 12 months after you started. Now, we propose to work like this, and I say propose because we didn't necessarily actually work like this, but this is kind of how we would talk about our process. I think it's a kind of common sense approach that people are very comfortable with, and it's primarily what our clients wanted to see. It's what they asked for. They wanted to know, what am I going to get? When am I going to get it? How much is it going to cost? They're like really understandable questions, and that's kind of what we were trying to give to them with a graphic like that. We were trying to build confidence in our team and our process, and we were doing that through giving kind of clarity and visibility. And that approach, even though it was we said that we worked in sprints, it was still a kind of waterfall approach, really. And that was a Gantt chart. Gantt charts are a really easy way of understanding that information. They're very clear. They can be useful to look at. They're certainly satisfying to make. I've made Gantt charts in the past, and it's satisfying to put together a project this way. And they're typically put together by very intelligent people who have the best intentions. Still, the words of Jess Sutherland, co-creator of Scrum, the only problem is that they're always wrong. And we found we had lots of problems at the end of projects if we'd started them in this way. There was risks that the projects would take longer and they would go over budget. We'd have difficult conversations with clients about change of scope, or the fact that there was delays, or you'd have to spend more money. There was a risk that the product that we delivered in the end didn't really meet expectations, even if we showed designs throughout the journey and took the client on that kind of journey of what we were going to make. It never quite lived up to the expectation at the point of delivery. Things aren't perfect, there are bugs, and those things always stood out more than the actual thing that we were delivering. It was really hard to define what an MVP is. We started off by saying we're going to make an MVP because that's the best thing that we can make for a budget, but people would always try and squeeze more and more things in. So was it really a minimal viable product, or did it end up being something much bigger than that? And it was really hard to validate the design that we had, because it wasn't until towards the end of the process that we had a sort of functioning piece of software that we could put in users' hands and get that kind of feedback. Now at Metal, we've got the luxury of kind of working with lots of different clients, lots of different projects, and we can often start again. So we had kind of a new project, and we thought we'd try a new approach. We thought instead of trying to define all the requirements up front, we would make things, and we would kind of learn as we go along. So we'd do a kind of discovery through making process, and we'd make one thing, we'd pick one feature to work on next, we would make that thing, and we would kind of learn from it and iterate it. We'd keep things as simple as possible, knowing that things might change, and be okay with that. We'd keep it as agile as possible. And now this is an agile approach, so I don't want to pretend like we've invented agile, but it's quite interesting now to look back at what the Agile Manifesto is and see how well it resonates to what kind of worked for us. The Agile Manifesto, for people who aren't aware, these are the kind of high-level principles. It's individuals and interactions over processes and tools, working software over comprehensive documentation, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, and that's kind of really key here, I think, responding to change over following a plan. And it's not that the things on the right aren't valued, or this is what they say, is that the things on the left are valued more. And yeah, that kind of totally resonates with the way that works for us and what's been effective for us in the past. Just to give you a bit of an example of kind of how that's worked for us on a specific project. So this was Fittle, a fitness startup where we helped design an at-home piece of gym equipment, and then an app with workout videos that kind of went along with it. And from the beginning, we decided that one of the things that we wanted to bottom out first was the relationship between the hardware and the software. We wanted to be able to load a workout video and use it and kind of test it with some equipment. And so we started there. We picked that one feature. We wanted to have a list of workouts and be able to play each of those videos. And by doing that, we kind of bottomed out loads of different kind of unknown unknowns. We found issues around kind of streaming and how to optimize that. We had questions around setting up a CMS so that the client could kind of upload the right videos and the right content. There was sort of, it made it really clear as to what the sort of next step should be. And we went through a series of iterative steps, kind of picking features until we had a product that we felt was properly ready for user testing. And then we did a trial. And interestingly, we didn't really think that it was a minimal viable product at that point. We thought that we had ideas for other features that weren't in there yet. But when we tested the product, we got no negative feedback at all on the app. And actually all the feedback was related to other things. They had to improve the content and some various other bits. And so the users themselves had kind of defined what an MVP was for us. They had defined that what we had already was already viable. And this worked on other projects as well. And overall, I think working this way gives us kind of better products. It's more likely to solve real user needs. We certainly get a higher level of engagement from clients, kind of working through this process, taking them step by step. Is a much better engagement. And we delivered early and under budget, and that often happens as well. In fact, sometimes we kind of do ourselves out of work by kind of delivering something that satisfies users early. So how do we talk about our process now? Well, I think in a nutshell, it is a make, test, learn cycle. We try to make something testable as quickly as possible, and then we test that internally, like with us as a team and with the stakeholders and with users, and we kind of try to involve real users as quickly as possible. And we learn and we iterate on that one kind of on that foundation. And then when it's ready, we then launch either with customers or maybe a beta product. And so on a roadmap, it looks something like this, where we try to get a first build in, maybe sort of 2 sprints in, that might be 4 weeks. And then we'll have a beta where we have a sort of smaller community that tests the product. And then some point down the line, it becomes a minimum lovable product is kind of what we aim for. Now, we sometimes get some challenges from working in this way. So just kind of roll through some of those. Like, where's the innovation? I think, you know, this is a very lean approach. And if you're starting with really core functionality, you know, there's not really much scope for innovation there. And I think, you know, we're a team of quite academic designers. We're big fans of the double diamond process. We really like design thinking. We love innovation, and there definitely is scope for that. But I think it all comes down to using the right tool for the right problem. And if you want to get things made, I think an agile process is 100% the best way to go. You know, don't overthink things, just make it. If it's something that you're not really sure about, but you feel like has really high value to the product, then that's where a kind of double diamond or design thinking process really comes into its own. And I don't think you need to do that first either. So, you know, what's worked quite well for us in the past is that we onboard ourselves on a project or in a space by making things. And at the point where we've kind of delivered this core requirement, then we can kind of go into a more innovative process or exploration phase and try and define what the kind of next steps are. And we're in a much better place to do that than if we try and do it right at the beginning before we've gone through that learning. Another common question is kind of, what about regulated industries? And these are still the words of Morecambe Wise, you know, you need to have all the right notes, but not necessarily in the right order. Clearly, with a sort of certified product, it needs to meet all the requirements, and it has to have all the necessary documentation. But that doesn't mean that you have to do all of those things up front. You can, you know, do them in the order that suits the project the best. This is more of an internal question that we get from kind of designers. You know, if we're doing things in a really lean, kind of tech-driven way, there's less scope for the kind of joyful interactions in design. And as designers, we love to design things which are a kind of pleasure to use. And sorry, sometimes we say this, which is maybe a bit of a challenging statement, that joy is another feature in the backlog. And to some extent, that's kind of true, in that when you're right at the beginning of a project, there are really core things that you have to deliver. And that does mean that maybe some of the more kind of exciting, kind of pleasurable parts of a UX or whatever don't happen, but it doesn't mean that they can't happen later. And I think as a product matures, this stuff becomes more and more important. So you kind of transition from kind of core functional requirements to being a more joyful experience as a product matures. I think there's also 2 quite distinct design activities. There's designing for now. There's designing for what you're going to make in maybe in the next sprint. And then there's also creating a vision. And creating a vision is really, really important to kind of rally everyone behind and to make sure you're kind of going in the right direction. And that design, that experience is full of joy. You know, that should be really exciting, a really kind of engaging experience. How do we now sell this kind of way of working to clients? Because it does take a lot of trust. You know, we are essentially not putting a price on a product or a fixed time amount of time on a deliverable. We're saying, you know, trust us to make this, and we will deliver you something great. How do we do that? Well, we say it's all around reducing risk, really. And by working this way, we deliver a functional, usable product much sooner. So there's kind of a massive reduced risk of delay or overspend. In fact, you get a usable product maybe a few sprints in, and so you're not spending all of your money to get a product 12 months down the line. You're getting something sort of 2 months, 1 month down the line, and then you're kind of iterating on that. So there's much less risk in the project as a whole. I think the planning phase of a kind of waterfall approach is if there's any kind of pivot, which inevitably there always is, can become wasted time. And you might spend the first 25-30% of a project kind of planning everything out, gathering all your requirements, deciding what it is that you're going to do. And if you do pivot, then that's all wasted. And that's the kind of time that could have been spent making something and learning from what you've made. And there's also no need to define what this MVP is, which is quite a challenging thing to do and quite a time sink at the beginning of a project. From our perspective, the main benefit is client engagement, really. By taking a client through this experience, or any stakeholder, they're kind of making decisions and they're getting to see the results of the decisions that they make. You get much better feedback, I think, from something that's made rather than something that's prototyped. We've tried to put really high fidelity prototypes into people's hands and to try and get kind of quality feedback. And there is no way that you'll get the same level of engagement and the same level of feedback from a high fidelity prototype as you will from something that's built and functional and does something. It forces clients to prioritize, which is great for us. Like, if you're asking somebody to decide what it is that we're going to make next week, you'll get a much better answer than if you try to ask somebody what should we be making next in the next 6 months, in the next year. They'll try and kind of pile everything in, but if you get somebody to pick one thing, you'll get a much better answer. And I think ultimately it's a more fun way of working. It's certainly more fun for us, and I think it's more fun for our clients, to see this kind of progressive cadence of iterative delivery. And that's it. Thank you for listening to me.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Luke. Big virtual applause. And we'll open up the floor for some questions. And again, feel free to kind of jump in, unmute yourself, or chuck something into the chat. Or one hot off the press. So from Amber Polly, is the concept that you don't run a discovery, or is this your process post-discovery?
We quite often, we have some form of discovery. So we definitely have to understand what it is that the client wants to achieve. And yeah, we will have some element of discovery beforehand, but we try to keep that quite small and as quickly as possible move into some sort of kind of iterative making cycle. So we don't have to understand everything, but we definitely have to have some understanding to go forward. So we might limit that to a sort of 2-week period. I think also we often do a lot of brand work up front as a sort of point of departure for a new project. So we define a kind of initial brand, if that doesn't exist, so that we have a kind of UI kit that we can iterate on. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but it is a point of departure for us to grow whatever we are building on.
We've got a hand up and a question that came in pretty much at the same time. So we'll go for the hand up.
Yeah, hi, it's Jason here. I hope you can hear me okay. I'm walking home in the rain. I couldn't see the slides, but I'm interested in when you say about making a prototype versus making it. So if you're making solid, like fitness equipment, for example, you're not going to be manufacturing several hundred of them, or maybe you are. I don't know. I'm kind of interested to know your differences between what you'd consider a prototype from a manufactured product point of view to something that is made. Yeah, thanks.
I think it's definitely more challenging to apply an agile process to a hardware project than it is to a software project. And with that project in particular, we did make prototypes, and we have gone through quite a lot of rounds of physical prototypes. And so we have still been kind of learning through making. I don't know, does that quite answer the question? Probably not.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, no. So you do make prototypes essentially.
We do definitely make prototypes. Yeah, when I said prototypes before, I think I was referring to a kind of software design. So
yeah,
kind of
that makes sense. Makes sense. Thanks a lot. Good talk. Enjoyed it. Thank you.
Great. And we'll just come to one last question from Ollie Beale. Did you ever find yourself running a waterfall style sprint plan just to appease clients? If not, did you just double down on agile outcomes and early release points?
Yes, we definitely do find ourselves in that situation, and it is it's quite frustrating sometimes, but You know, yeah, sometimes you have to do what the client asks you to do.
Great. Well, thanks again, Luke. That was really brilliant. We will now pass over to Katrina, who's going to introduce our third and final speaker for the evening.
Yeah, our speakers today are wonderful. And as a chair on top, we have Jenny Parker. So Jenny is an award-winning designer, social innovator, and system thinker. She's not only founder and director of Humanly, but also the person who stood at the origins of Service Lab. So please, round of applause for Jenny. Thank you for creating this for us. So Jenny is passionate about the power of human-centered design to develop solutions to some of the world's most pressing problems and to transform the organizations who address these challenges. For example, the Center for Aging Better. I won't talk about it too much as Jenny can do it better. So Jenny, could you please start from introducing yourself, your pronouns, and your visual description?
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. I'm Jenny. My pronouns are she, her. I am a white woman with auburn hair and glasses. I'm wearing a jazzy jumper, which is quite typical for me. And I'm in the Humanly Design Studio. And there are some design books behind me and some plants. And today I'm going to be talking about co-creation of employment support. So I will just start sharing my screen. So just to say a few words about Humanly, as well as myself, we're an award-winning design studio. We're a small team of 4, and we work on social impact projects exclusively. So we always apply human-centered design as our process, and we work on a really wide range of topics with clients ranging from charities in the UK to international NGOs, UN agencies, and local and central government as well. And as for myself, my background is in design, and I've been working in social innovation for over 10 years now. And the project I'm going to talk about today was commissioned by the Centre for Aging Better, which is a national charity focused on ageing. And they are actually working in partnership with Greater Manchester Combined Authority and DWP. So it's quite an interesting partnership, combining sort of charity, lobbying for better age-friendly employment environments, alongside local government and central government organisations who are responsible for commissioning employment support programmes in Greater Manchester and nationally. So we were brought in to lead a participatory iterative design process over 18 months to develop and prototype new approaches to supporting people aged over 50 into work in Greater Manchester. And we ended up involving over 18 months, over 200 people in the design process, which was an amazing experience and led us to hear a really wide range of perspectives from stakeholders from sort of every aspect of the system. So that included people aged over 50 who have lived experience of being involuntarily out of work. We, of course, had our clients, so stakeholders from Centre for Aging Better, Greater Manchester Combined Authority and DWP. We had stakeholders from local areas within Greater Manchester, employers, employment support providers, and we involved different experts in labour market, economics, innovation, coaching and more. And I wanted to mention us as well. I think sometimes we forget that we're not just facilitators of a co-creation process, but we do have a valuable contribution to bring as well. I think as designers, we have a really unique position to be able to speak to everyone and then step back and look at the system with a fresh set of eyes and just sort of joining the dots as well. And that was something that we found really happened in this project, just bringing that fresh perspective into the employment support landscape, which is very complex. So in terms of methodology, the first people that we wanted to co-design with were people over 50 with lived experience of being out of work. And to do that, we developed creative toolkits. This was during COVID-19, so we were limited in how much in-person work we could do. But we really wanted people to get creative and hands-on as we would normally do in our workshops. So we developed these creative kits with loads of different activities, including getting people to map out their journeys and their job seeking journeys, getting people's ideas for what a good life over 50 looks like and what their ideal job and ideal support would look like. And then we had calls for people to follow up and discuss their ideas and experiences in more detail. So that was a really good, insightful process. And then we used a range of other methods with different stakeholders, including employers, providers, experts, local authority stakeholders. So this included more interviews, surveys, and workshops. We mainly did these online, but we did actually get the chance to shadow work coaches at 4 job centres, which was really good to get a first-hand view of what employment support looks like on the ground. And we were also very lucky to work with Hilary Cottam as an advisor on the project, and that was really brilliant as Hilary's focus at the moment is on the future of work. So she brought a lot of really good insights and innovative ideas as well. So we took all those insights and ideas from all the different stakeholders and clustered them, and that led us to identify 6 key opportunity areas. And these were quite wide-ranging in scope, ranging from how do we make existing support easier to navigate, how can we help people transition back into work if they've been out of work for a long time, and how do we help people to identify and communicate their transferable skills, which is a real challenge for people over 50. One of the key insights we found was existing employment support doesn't really work well on the ground for people aged over 50. And sort of interrogating that, we discovered that this is often symptomatic of the way that support's commissioned and the way that contracts with employment support providers are monitored. So we heard that payment by results models can often put pressure on support providers to work to targets that often leave people aged over 50 left behind. So it became clear that the challenge had to be tackled at multiple levels to effectively solve the problem. So based on all these opportunities, we developed a few initial concepts. We shared those with people with lived experience, stakeholders and service providers, and got lots of feedback and just continuously refined and iterated all those ideas. And then that led us to develop 4 concepts to take into prototyping. These ranged from giving people employment support personal budgets, finding ways for people to take part in meaningful paid placements, designing self-guided support to help people identify their skills, and actually looking at the procurement process and how we could innovate around that to create better conditions for good support. So we tested these 4 concepts at different fidelities, and we actually narrowed them down to 2 final concepts through the process, which I'm going to touch upon now. So firstly, we had the concept of Reach, which was designed as a tool to help people identify their transferable skills and work towards their goals. So as part of that, people would get a personalised experience and have the opportunity to engage with one-to-one support to help them identify their goals and develop plans. To test this at a low fidelity, we actually used existing tools to get people to do self-reflection activities. So those were a mixture of tools that we found as part of our desk research, and actually some of our tools that we developed as part of co-creation, which we thought might also work. And then they had a coaching session, which, as you can see in the image on the screen, was actually with me. So that was the quickest and easiest way to test the concept. So we tested the idea of using broad and holistic questions to help people reflect on their transferable skills, explore their goals, and think about what actions they could take. We then started looking at what a digital version of this could look like, and we created an initial digital prototype and an explainer style video, sort of walking through the key features, which we embedded in the survey so that we could test the concept quickly with people over 50 and key stakeholders. This led us to develop the idea further into a final clickable prototype, which we did more in-depth user testing around with 8 people aged over 50 with lived experience of unemployment. I do have a video as well, which I hope is going to work, which explains where we landed with the concept.
Reach is an online platform designed to help you in your journey towards work. There is advice for landing a job, information on careers in Greater Manchester informed by labour market data, links to Job Centre Plus for support with benefits, information on activities in your local area, and success stories from people who have used the platform. At any time, you can speak to someone via the live chat feature or book an appointment. The platform has interactive tools to help you prepare for employment through the use of self-reflection exercises, action plans and guidance around CVs, cover letters and preparing for interviews. The Identify Your Skills tool helps you to reflect on your life experiences and the transferable skills and qualities these led you to develop. When identifying an experience or activity, Reach suggests skills that you may have gained from this experience. Working through each decade builds a rich picture of your skills and experience. The activities and experiences adapt to each decade to reflect common life, work and education experiences, with the option to add any additional activities and skills always available. Signing up is easy at any point using Reach, and all the details provided help to personalise your experience of the platform. After completing the activity, you will be presented with possible career paths that are ranked by how well they match your skills, experience and qualifications. Each option includes a tailor-made action plan to help you navigate the next steps towards a new career. To help you work towards gaining new skills or improve your well-being while working towards work, the Activities in Your Area section is designed to connect you to local or online support based on your goals and interests. Reach, personalised employment support for all people aged over 50.
Hopefully everyone could hear that okay. So that was our final prototype, which we got people to click through and explore and use the testing sessions. And the response was amazing. It was probably the most positive response we've ever had to a prototype, which was really exciting after this sort of really long design process. And a lot of participants said that they haven't come across anything like it. And some people were asking us if it actually existed so that they could go on to it straight after the interview. So that was really rewarding to hear. The main feedback we got was people really liked the fact that it was holistic. So one comment that we received was, it's not just pushing you on the job route, there's lots of different support from mental health to volunteering. So that was our sort of main concept for a new service. And alongside that, we kept exploring this idea of changing the actual procurement, commissioning, management of contracts with organisations delivering employment support, looking at how could we foster innovation, how could we foster more local person-centred support to help people in their journeys towards work, and how could we involve people aged over 50 in that process as well. So to test this idea, we started by creating a high-level mock-up of an invitation to apply for funding to actually support people over 50 into work. We sent that to 7 small local organisations across Greater Manchester, and we got really valuable feedback from them about what it might be like for them to participate in this hypothetical procurement process, and how that compared to their experiences of current procurement and grant funding processes. For the next stage, we developed a more detailed invitation to tender for hypothetical funding, again, to deliver employment support to people over 50. And this time we actually got feedback from a person over 50 who lives in Manchester and has experience of unemployment, and other stakeholders within the local authority with experience of commissioning, to actually look at some other aspects of the concept. So we sent that out then to some local organisations that had expressed interest, and we made it very clear that no actual funding was available, but we did offer compensation if people were willing to take the time to put together a response and sort of take part in our prototyping process. They were really enthusiastic and helpful, which was great, and we actually received 2 hypothetical bids to deliver support. And we developed a scoring format for assessing bids, which was all around, you know, how much would this support actually meet the needs of people aged over 50. And we had a commissioning panel, which included a couple of members of our team. We had a person over 50 from the local area and stakeholders from GMCA. And then we actually shortlisted one of the bids, which was from the Boiler House, which is an amazing community workshop in Manchester that runs men's sheds and women's sheds, which is quite exciting, as that would be a very unusual suspect, if you like, for delivering employment support. So the final prototype was to test an alternative format for the final stage of assessment. So we asked bidders to suggest what they thought would work best to sort of find out about the service they have to offer. So the Boiler House said, well, actually, the best way to learn about our service is to come and visit. So we went to visit their amazing workshop. We met a few of their service users and had informal conversations. We had the local resident over 50 with us, and she was actually great. She asked a lot of questions and led most of the day. And it really helped us to develop that rich understanding of what they had to offer, which doesn't always come across in paper. And these small organisations don't necessarily have bid writers and these kind of resources to make the most of a traditional procurement process. So that was very insightful. We also had a panel member who couldn't join the visit, which we thought was actually quite realistic. So we tested developing a little summary of the visit, and then we had a debrief and sort of revisited our scores to see how that impacted on the overall score. So that was all of our prototyping, and what's happening now is that GMCA is looking to launch a pilot of these 2 approaches, and the aim is to have wider influence nationally as well. So we've delivered detailed recommendations, basically suggesting that REACH is developed and tested in a pilot, and that this new procurement process is used to appoint a local community-based organisation to deliver the one-to-one support and coaching as part of piloting REACH. And that is in progress at the moment, hopefully getting off the ground very soon. And lastly, just wanted to mention, if you want to find out more, there are more reports on the Centre for Ageing Better website about the project. And also we co-wrote a paper about remote user engagement with the Centre for Ageing Better, which has more information on the toolkits and methodologies that we used in this project and other projects. So sorry, I overran. And if people have time to hang around, I'll be happy to take questions.
Thank you so much, Jenny. That was great. Lots of love in the chat already. We'll open up for questions. There's already, Amber has a quick question just about, are you happy to share slides afterwards?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is going to be on YouTube as well, if you want to hear my dulcet tones alongside those.
I don't mind getting the ball rolling. This is obviously a really large amount of people to speak to within a co-design process. I suppose I would love to know, like, what do you think are the main benefits of doing co-design with such a large amount of people? Were there any drawbacks? Was there anything you'd do differently?
That's a great question. I think when we actually got that feedback at the end, it really felt like the payoff, and it really felt that actually investing all that time meant by the end we had really nailed it with our final concept. So I don't think I've ever felt quite so sure about a solution that I've developed and recommended, and I think the team would probably agree. So that was really good, just feeling that we had that time, and it was a privilege to be given that amount of time and support to really dig deep and really look at the issue in depth and look at it from all perspectives. So I would definitely do it again. If I could do anything differently, probably just the obvious one of spending more time on the ground. It was tough to do the bulk of it remotely. It wouldn't have been our first choice, but we did get there. But you can't really beat immersing yourself on the ground. We probably could have done it quicker if we'd had the chance to do that as well.
Thanks. That's really interesting to hear. Yeah, I think everyone misses being able to do in-person research, especially at that moment. We've got a question from Beck Lester. Incredible project. Thank you for sharing. Can you talk more about how you involved the clients? E.g., did they attend the co-creating and testing sessions?
Yeah, so it was a really close collaboration. There was multiple ways in which we collaborated really closely. So we had a sort of core project team between ourselves and the Centre for Aging Better, and the project manager was sat between Centre for Aging Better and GMCA as well, which was really helpful. And we met sort of every week, and then we had a design working group which had representatives from GMCA and DWP on it as well. And we met with them monthly, and then we had a steering group which was bigger and had more stakeholders from GMCA particularly, and we met with them sort of every couple of months. So there were different tiers of involvement with the core client organizations, and then they were part of all our workshops and things like that as well. We did use some of those steering group sessions to do creative activities and not just present updates and get feedback. So yeah, basically we were involved all the way through, but those were the main mechanisms.
And we've got probably time for one more question. So Don Burton's got a question. Did the client ask for a co-design approach, or did you have to sell them that approach?
They asked for it. When we read the invitation to tender, we're very excited. And I think the Centre for Aging Better did a lot of pre-work to actually galvanise the different organisations to sort of take the leap really and commission this co-design at scale project, but they specifically wanted to go through the co-design and prototyping process. And I think, yeah, it was really exciting for us to get the opportunity to do that and not to have to sell that as the approach. Obviously, there were a lot of other stakeholders not involved with commissioning the project that had to be brought along the journey and introduced to all these new ways of working. But yeah, we did actually have the privilege of being asked to do that from the outset.
Amazing. I hope we all get to see more projects that are asking for co-design at the outset, and we don't have to sell it in as much. That was phenomenal. Thank you so much, Jenny. So we're just going to wrap up now. So just got a few more thank yous to go through. So thank you to everyone for joining us on this wet, quite miserable evening. Thanks to the person who was walking home in the rain as well and listening in. Really enjoyed that. Thanks again to our amazing speakers. From Trisha, just a little recap of things that we heard. We heard about how to design with colleagues, with teams, with your career progression, kind of managers, and how beneficial it can be to make time for this, and how much some of Trisha's senior staff really appreciated being given that time in the past as well. That say, think, do, feel model really stuck with me as well. I think that's something really useful that people could take forward. And out of those top tips that you shared at the end, I think one of the things that really stood out was put the problem in front of you and not between you. I think that's a really lovely sentiment. So thanks again, Trisha. That was wonderful. Luke, really brilliant talk. Thank you so much for talking us through some of your kind of new approaches, this idea of picking one thing to work on and then moving on to the next thing, this fast-paced make, test, learn, and learning all about the work that you were doing on FITL. I think it was really interesting to see how it can be so challenging to define what an MVP is, and there's possibly ways of enabling your users to help define with you at an earlier stage what that MVP looks like. I thought that was brilliant. And Jenny, thank you so much for talking us through a really heartwarming, brilliant project, learning how you managed to speak to so many people in a really kind of like staged approach. Really love the creative toolkits, and Jenny mentioned that you'd be able to see more about that if you went through onto those links as well. And I also thought that like staged approach of testing concept at those different fidelities and doing those rounds of research and using explainer videos was a real joy to see. So from us, the only thing that we want to do just before we completely say goodbye to you all for the evening Has anyone got any community announcements? So feel free to either put them in the chat or unmute yourself. It could be that you're hiring, you're looking for support on a project, you're looking for work, whatever it is. I'll give everyone the floor for a moment.
Yeah, I'll jump in right away to say that Zizi is hiring. We're looking for contract and perm service designers and a perm content designer.
Please do let us know if you've got any ideas on how we can improve these events. Those asks at the beginning still stand. If you've got an event space, let us know. If you want to do a talk, let us know. If you want to nominate someone to do a talk, if you've got an idea of a topic, or if you want to come and help us deliver these events, we would really appreciate it. But we'll let you go, and we'll look forward to letting you know more about events in the future, in next year. But also it sounds like there was some good appetite for a networking event, so we'll put something up over the next few days. Thanks so much, everyone.